All right, diving right in today, we're going to tackle Microsoft Dynamics 365 Business Central licensing. You send over some really great Microsoft Learn materials, and honestly, I got to say, this stuff can be a lifesaver later on. If you really wrap your head around it, it can save you a lot of trouble and definitely some expense down the line. It's not as dry as it sounds either, trust me.
Yeah, well, that's what we're here for, right? To spice things up a bit.
Yeah, exactly. There are some really interesting twists and turns to uncover.
It's a bit of a puzzle, really, when you think about it. You got to find that perfect fit, between what your business needs and the licensing options out there.
Okay, so let's unpack this puzzle then, shall we? Microsoft really makes this fundamental distinction right off the bat about internal and external users. What's the deal there?
Well, think of it this way. Your internal users are your employees, right? So people who work directly within your organization. External users are those folks outside. So they interact with your business, but they're not on the payroll. So, think like vendors, customers, maybe contractors. This distinction is really important because it directly impacts, your licensing needs and ultimately your budget.
Right, because I'd imagine external users often, have different access needs than like full-fledged employees, right?
Yeah.
Does that mean that they might not even need like a full license?
Exactly. It really comes down to carefully assessing who needs access to what.
Right.
So, for example, a vendor, they may just need to view invoices, and then you have a customer. Maybe they just want to track, order status. You're not going to give them the keys to the entire system, right?
That makes sense. And speaking of access, Business Central uses a named user approach, right? So no sharing licenses. Everybody needs their own. Is that common these days?
It is, yeah. It's pretty standard for cloud-based software these days. Now, I get it might seem like a bigger upfront investment compared to the old days, where you'd buy, a limited number of licenses to share, but it often provides more flexibility and scalability in the long run, right? You're not restricted by that fixed number of licenses, and you can easily add or remove users as your business needs change.
So it's like trading a fixed cost for a variable cost, but with the added benefit of flexibility. Okay, so we've got internal and external users figured out, and we know everyone needs their own license. But then things get even more interesting because there are different types of users.
Yeah.
Within Business Central itself, we've got full users and team members. Can you break down that distinction for us?
So think of it this way. Full users, they're your power users. They need access to really the full spectrum of Business Central's, functionality. Typically, your sales team, folks in finance, controllers, supply chain managers, really anyone who relies on those robust features to do their jobs effectively.
Right, the people who live and breathe Business Central every day.
Yeah.
So where do team members fit into this? Are they essentially, like elite users with more limited access?
Precisely. Yeah. Team members have more focused access, right? Tailored to those who really only need to perform specific tasks within the system. So let's say, you have someone who primarily needs to enter timesheets or update, basic HR records. Full user license in that scenario would be overkill.
So it's about tailoring the licensing to match each user's actual needs and responsibilities. And I'm guessing this can be a major cost-saving opportunity for businesses if they get it right.
Absolutely. You don't want to, pay for a Ferrari when all you need is a reliable sedan, right?
Perfect analogy. But choosing between a full user and a team member license, isn't always a simple decision, right? Are there scenarios where a company might, start with team members to save costs, but later realize they need to upgrade to full users?
All the time. Imagine a company trying to, keep costs down initially, right? So they assign team member licenses to, their sales team. But then they realize that those limitations are actually hindering productivity. Sales team can't create new leads or opportunities, and they're constantly running into roadblocks, right? In that case, upgrading to full users, it might be a worthwhile investment to unlock those capabilities and improve overall sales performance.
So it's a balancing act between upfront costs and long-term productivity. It's about recognizing that sometimes, those initial cost savings might come back to bite you later on.
Exactly. It's like that saying, penny wise and pound foolish.
Okay, so we've got our users sorted out, but then there's another layer to this cake. Essentials and Premium, the two tiers of Business Central functionality. Can you walk us through those?
So Essentials is kind of like your all-inclusive vacation package, It provides, a comprehensive suite of tools covering everything from, financial management to customer relationship management, supply chain, HR management, even warehouse management. Most businesses they find this tier, it covers their core operational needs.
So Essentials sounds like it covers a lot of ground. What does Premium bring to the table that Essentials doesn't?
So Premium builds on Essentials. It adds service management and manufacturing capabilities. So let's say, you're a small business, but you have these aspirations of expanding into, manufacturing.
Hmm.
In that case, Premium would be, the strategic choice. It gives you the tools you need to manage production processes, track inventory, handle, all these complexities of a manufacturing operation.
So it's not just about what you need today, but also where you see your business going in the future. If you're anticipating growth in specific areas, it makes sense to invest in the functionality that will support those aspirations.
Precisely. It's about, planning for tomorrow, not just managing today.
Okay, let's zoom back in on those team members for a second. We know they have more limited access, but what exactly can they do within Business Central? The document mentioned some specific capabilities.
Right, it did. So team members, they have read access to everything within Business Central,
Yeah.
which is fantastic for overall visibility, right? They can update existing, data and entries, keeping information current. They can also approve or reject tasks, in workflows, create or edit quotes, manage their personal information, enter timesheets for jobs, and even use Power Apps for Dynamics 365.
Wow, that's quite a bit they can do. But I'm guessing there are also some important limitations we need to be aware of, right?
There are. While they can update existing entries, there are limits to what they can actually, modify within those entries.
Mm.
It's not just about understanding what a user can do, but also the WHY behind those, limitations. So, for example, a team member, they might be able to update a customer's address, but not their credit limit. Those seemingly minor limitations can have real-world consequences, depending on your business processes.
So it's all about thinking through those limitations carefully and understanding how they might impact your workflow.
That's a great point. No, we can't forget about those external users. You mentioned earlier that they often have different access needs. What does the document say about how we can manage their access?
So this is where things get, a bit nuanced. While limited external user access is included with your, internal user licenses, there are some important caveats. For example, external users, they can't access the graphical interfaces for Business Central or sales or customer service or field service. So their access is primarily restricted to specific data and processes rather than the full visual experience of the system.
Yeah. Think of it this way, they can see and interact with, certain pieces of information, right, relevant to their role, but they don't have free reign over the entire platform. It's all about striking that balance, right, between providing necessary access and maintaining security and control.
That makes sense. It's like giving them a limited access key card to specific areas of the building rather than handing them the master key.
Exactly, but there's a really interesting option here. You can actually license Power Pages to provide external users with more access to your business processes or data if needed. It's another layer of flexibility within the licensing model, allowing you to fine tune who sees what based on their role and your security requirements.
So it's not a black and white situation. You have options for expanding external access if those basic capabilities aren't enough. That's pretty cool. But then the document throws a curveball when it talks about who doesn't qualify as an external user. What's the deal there?
So it specifically states that anyone acting as an extension of your team, whether they're employees, on-site or independent contractors, vendors, agents, affiliates, they're not considered external users. They fall under, that internal user category.
That seems logical. They're essentially part of, your internal operations,
Yeah.
even if they're not technically on your payroll. But then there's this whole external accountant thing. That really threw me for a loop. The document mentions this user type, but then says it's not considered an external user as previously defined. Why wouldn't an accountant working for a separate firm be considered an external user?
Well, that's where the steep dive gets really fascinating. I know it seems counterintuitive, but But there are a few possibilities here. It could be a legacy term, right? That's stuck around even though, the definition of external user has evolved. Or, and this is just speculation, but there might be, specific legal or compliance reasons for classifying accountants differently when it comes to, data access and permissions. Think about, the sensitivity of financial data.
So there could be regulations or requirements around who can access that type of information,
Yeah.
even if that person isn't directly employed by the company.
Precisely. It highlights the fact that sometimes these seemingly simple terms have a lot of complexity behind them, right? It's not always as straightforward as it appears, on the surface.
Okay, we've covered a lot of ground here. We've explored internal and external users, full users versus team members, the two tiers of functionality, essentials and premium, and even the nuances of external access and those intriguing external accountant conundrums. What's the key takeaway you think our listeners should really, really grasp at this point?
I'd say the most important takeaway is this. Business Central licensing, it's not a one-size-fits-all solution. It's about carefully evaluating, the needs of each user and matching them to the appropriate license type and functionality level. It's like assembling a complex puzzle where each piece has its own, specific place and purpose.
So it's about understanding those individual pieces,
Yeah.
but also seeing how they all fit together to create the bigger picture.
Exactly. And that bigger picture includes understanding how these licensing decisions impact not just your current operations, but also your future growth and scalability.
Yeah, right. Because choosing the wrong licensing model today could create limitations or inefficiencies down the road.
Absolutely. That's why it's so important to approach this strategically, thinking not just about what you need right now, but also where you want to be, in the future.
Okay, so we've laid the groundwork with all these foundational concepts, but now I'm curious to see how these concepts actually play out in real world scenarios. I mean, in part two, we'll delve into some case studies and practical examples to see how these licensing decisions can impact businesses in different ways. So stay tuned for that. Welcome back to the deep dive. In part one, we laid the groundwork for understanding Microsoft Dynamics 365 Business Central licensing, talked about different user types, functionality levels, and even those tricky external accountants scenarios. Now let's shift gears and explore how these concepts actually play out in the real world.
Yeah, it's one thing to understand the theory, right? But it's another to see how these decisions actually impact businesses on a day-to-day basis.
Right, because sometimes those dry Microsoft documents can feel a bit, abstract.
Yeah.
It helps to have some real world examples to make it all click. Speaking of real world examples, there's one section in the document we haven't touched on yet, the part about outsourced business services. What are the boundaries there? What does it mean in practical terms for our listener?
So this is where Microsoft draws a line in the sand about
Yeah.
using Business Central to manage the operations of completely separate unaffiliated companies. You can't use it to run the day-to-day business of a third party.
So, for example, if I'm a marketing agency, I can't use Business Central to manage all my client work within the system. That would be
Yeah.
a no-no.
Exactly. Yeah, that would fall under, outsourced business services, which is a violation of the licensing terms. You can't use Business Central to handle, things like sales orders, invoices, purchase orders, payments, payroll, HR, telemarketing, data recording, or social media marketing for another company.
Okay, so there are definitely some clear restrictions there. But
Yeah.
what about situations where the lines are a bit blurrier? For instance, the document mentions that employees are allowed to prepare periodic financial statements for clients within Business Central.
Yeah.
How does that work if we're not supposed to be, managing external businesses within the system?
That's a great question, and it highlights an important distinction. Preparing financial statements, it's considered a professional service, not an outsourced business service. It's a specific defined task rather than, managing the entirety of a company's operations.
So it's like the difference between, helping someone with their taxes once a year versus running their entire payroll system on an ongoing basis. One is a service, the other is taking over their business operations.
Precisely. It comes down to, the scope and nature of the work being performed. And this brings us back to, that external accountant scenario we discussed earlier.
Right, because on the surface, it seems like an accountant working for a separate firm would clearly be an external user, but as we discussed, there might be deeper reasons for classifying them differently.
Exactly. It highlights how, complex these seemingly simple terms can become, right? It's not always black and white. There could be, legal compliance or security considerations that dictate how certain user types are defined and what access they're granted. It's a good reminder to not just, take things at face value, but to really delve into the underlying logic and reasoning.
Okay, so let's say our listener has absorbed all this information about user types, functionality levels, and the rules around external access. What are some practical steps they can take to start, applying this knowledge to their own business?
So the first step is to really thoroughly assess their current situation. Who are their users? What are their, specific roles and responsibilities? What features and functionalities do they actually need to, perform their jobs effectively? Once you have a clear understanding of your, user base and their needs, you can start mapping those needs to the appropriate license types.
So it's like taking inventory of your workforce,
Yeah.
and figuring out who needs a full toolbox versus who can get by with more basic set of tools.
Exactly. And this assessment, it's not a one-time thing. It's an ongoing process. As your business grows and evolves, your licensing needs will likely change as well. You might need to, add new users, upgrade existing licenses, or even downgrade some licenses, if roles and responsibilities shift.
So it's about staying agile and adaptable, making sure your licensing strategy aligns with the ever-changing needs of your business. But let's get even more practical here. What are some specific examples of how these licensing decisions might play out in different business scenarios?
Okay, let's say you're a small manufacturing company, just starting out, right? You have a limited budget and a lean team. In this case, you might opt for essentials licenses for your core team members who handle finance, sales, and operations. You might even be able to get by with team member licenses for some employees who only need limited access to the system.
So you're starting small and scaling up as needed, being mindful of those costs.
Exactly. Now, let's say, your manufacturing business starts to take off, right? You're expanding your product line, increasing production, and hiring more employees. At this point, you might realize you need to, upgrade to premium licenses to access those advanced manufacturing and service management capabilities.
It's like leveling up in a video game. As you gain experience and resources, you unlock new features and functionalities to support your growth. But what if you're a company that works extensively with external partners or clients? How might licensing considerations differ in that context?
So that's where those external user access rules we discussed become, especially important. Let's say you're a consulting firm that collaborates closely with clients on projects, right? You might need to provide those clients with limited access to Business Central to view, project updates, share documents, or track progress.
Right, but you wouldn't want to give them full access to your entire system. That could raise security and confidentiality
Yeah,
concerns.
exactly. So you would carefully manage their access.
Yeah.
Leveraging those, built-in external user capabilities we discussed earlier. You might even consider licensing Power Pages if you need to provide those external users with a more customized and interactive experience.
So you're striking that balance between collaboration and control, making sure external parties have the access they need without compromising the security and integrity of your system.
Exactly. And these are just a few examples. The specific licensing decisions, they'll vary depending on, the unique needs and circumstances of each each business.
Right. There's no one-size-fits-all solution here. It's about understanding the options, assessing your needs, and making strategic choices that align with your business goals.
Well said. And that's, that's where those Microsoft partners we mentioned earlier can be, incredibly valuable. They have the expertise to guide you through this process, helping you navigate the complexities of licensing and find the perfect fit for your, specific requirements.
So don't be afraid to reach out for help if you're feeling overwhelmed. These experts can save you a lot of headaches and ensure you're making the most of your business central investment.
Absolutely. They can be your trusted advisors, helping you optimize your licensing strategy and avoid, costly mistakes.
Now we've talked a lot about the practicalities of licensing, but I want to shift gears for a moment and touch on a broader question that came up earlier. You asked whether the rise of cloud software and subscription models has made businesses more or less flexible in how they manage software access and costs. What are your thoughts on that?
It's a fascinating question, and I think the answer is both yes and no.
Love so.
On the one hand, cloud software has undoubtedly introduced a new level of flexibility, right? You can easily scale your software usage up or down as needed, adding or removing users with just a few clicks, and you only pay for what you use, which can be a huge advantage over those traditional software models where you might have been locked into a long-term contract and forced to pay for licenses you weren't even using.
Right. So in terms of pure scalability and cost management, cloud software seems like a clear win.
Agreed. But there's a flip side to that coin. The subscription-based nature of cloud software can also create a sense of being locked in, right? Once you've invested in a particular platform like Business Central, it can be difficult and costly to switch to a different solution down the road.
Oh, so there's a potential trade-off. You gain flexibility in the short term, but might sacrifice some flexibility in the long term.
Exactly. And that's why it's so important to carefully consider your long-term business goals and needs when choosing a cloud software solution. You want to make sure the platform you choose can grow and evolve with your business, and that you're comfortable with the ongoing costs associated with a subscription model.
That's a crucial point. It's not just about what works today, but also about anticipating what you might need tomorrow. So how can businesses navigate this balance between short-term flexibility and long-term commitment?
It all comes back to due diligence and planning. Thoroughly research your options, considering not just the features and functionality of different platforms, but also their scalability, their pricing models, and their track record of innovation and support. And don't be afraid to engage those Microsoft partners we keep mentioning. They can be invaluable resources, helping you assess your current and future needs, evaluate different cloud platforms, and ultimately make an informed decision that aligns with your overall business strategy.
So it's about taking a holistic view, understanding the potential trade-offs, and making strategic decisions that support both your present and future needs.
Precisely. And remember, the world of cloud software is constantly evolving, right? So staying informed and adaptable is key. New technologies and licensing models are always emerging, so it's an ongoing process of learning and adaptation.
All right, we've covered a lot of ground in this part of our deep dive, from practical examples of licensing decisions to broader reflections on the evolving landscape of cloud software. But let's not forget one crucial aspect of this whole conversation: cost optimization. In part 3, we'll explore some strategies and tips for keeping those Business Central licensing costs in check. So stay tuned for that.
Welcome back to the deep dive. We've spent the last 2 parts of this episode really digging into the complexities of Microsoft Dynamics 365 Business Central licensing, from understanding different user types and functionalities to exploring real world scenarios and those broader questions around cloud software flexibility. But let's be honest, one of the biggest concerns for any business when it comes to software is cost. So in this final part, we're going to focus on some practical strategies for optimizing those Business Central licensing costs.
Yeah, let's face it. No one wants to overspend on software licenses, and with Business Central, there are some smart moves you can make to ensure you're getting the most value for your investment.
So let's get into those smart moves. Where do we start? What are some of the first things our listeners should consider when trying to keep those costs in check?
The first step is deceptively simple. Make sure you're not over licensing your users. It's easy to fall into the trap of thinking, everyone needs a full user license, but that's rarely the case.
That goes back to what we talked about earlier, right?
Yeah.
Really taking the time to assess each user's needs and responsibilities.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Do they truly need access to the full suite of features, or can they get by with a team member license? Remember, that those team members they still have access to a lot of functionalities. They can read data, update entries, participate in workflows, and even use Power Apps. For many users, that's more than enough.
So it's about starting with a critical eye and asking, does this person really need the keys to the kingdom, or just a pass to certain areas?
Precisely. And it's not just a one-time assessment either. You should regularly review your user base and make sure everyone has the right level of access. People change roles, responsibilities shift, and you might find that some users no longer need those more expensive full user licenses.
So it's about staying on top of things, being proactive and making adjustments as needed. It sounds like a lot of companies could be leaving money on the table, simply because they're not actively managing their licenses.
More often than you might think. It's like subscribing to cable TV and never bothering to check if you're still watching all those channels you're paying for. Sometimes a little spring cleaning is in order.
I love that analogy. Okay, so we've tackled over licensing. What other cost-saving tips do you have up your sleeve?
Another area to explore is Microsoft's pricing tiers for Business Central. They often have different pricing options based on the number of users you have.
I've heard about those pricing tiers, but to be honest, I've always found them a bit confusing. Can you shed some light on how they actually work?
Absolutely. As your business grows, you might qualify for volume discounts. It's worth checking with Microsoft or a partner to see what's available. These tiers can significantly impact your overall costs, especially as your user base expands.
So it's not just a flat rate per user. There's actually a sliding scale that can work in your favor as you grow. That's good to know. It reminds me of those bulk discounts you get at the grocery store, right? Buy more, save more.
Exactly. It's all about leveraging those economies of scale to your advantage. And while we're on the topic of leveraging resources, don't forget about those external user access options we discussed earlier.
Right. The whole debate about who qualifies as an external user and how much access they should have.
Think about how you're using that built-in external user access. Remember, you have a limited number of external users included with your internal licenses. If you find yourself constantly bumping up against that limit, it might be more cost effective to look into licensing Power Pages.
So if you're a company that heavily relies on collaboration with external partners or clients, it might be worth crunching the numbers to see if Power Pages could save you money in the long run.
Precisely. It gives you more flexibility and control over external access. And it might even, streamline your workflows and improve collaboration. It's about finding that sweet spot between using the included external user access and making a strategic investment in Power Pages if your needs demand it.
Okay, I'm adding evaluate Power Pages to my cost-saving checklist. What else should be on that list? Any other secret weapons you can share?
Here's one that often gets overlooked. Don't be afraid to negotiate with Microsoft or your
Negotiate. I love it.
Seriously, especially if you're a larger organization or you're making a significant investment in Business Central, there might be room for negotiation on pricing.
Right.
It's like buying a car. You wouldn't just accept the sticker price without trying to haggle a bit, right?
Exactly. The worst they can say is no, but you might be surprised at how willing they are to work with you to find a solution that fits your budget. Don't leave money on the table by assuming everything is set in stone.
So rule number one of cost optimization: always ask. You never know what kind of deal you might be able to strike. This has been incredibly helpful. We've covered so much ground in this deep dive. We talked about right-sizing licenses, exploring pricing tiers, leveraging Power Pages for external access, and even the power of negotiation. What a toolkit!
And remember, these cost-saving strategies, they're just one piece of the puzzle, right? When it comes to implementing and managing Business Central effectively.
Right. It's not just about the financial aspect.
Yeah.
It's about making sure Business Central truly works for your business.
Yeah.
Supporting your operations and driving growth.
Exactly. You need to think about, training, ongoing support, customization, and seamless, integration with your other systems. It's about taking a holistic approach and making sure you have the right resources and support in place to maximize your investment in Business Central.
Well said. It's about seeing the big picture and making sure all the pieces fit together harmoniously. Well, on that note, we've reached the end of our deep dive into the world of Business Central licensing. I hope you're feeling much more informed and confident about navigating this sometimes complex landscape. We've covered a lot of ground, from the basics of user types and functionality levels to more advanced strategies for cost optimization.
Yeah, and even if you're not ready to become a Business Central licensing expert overnight, hopefully you've gained some valuable insights and a framework for making smart decisions.
Absolutely. The key is to stay curious, stay informed, and never be afraid to ask questions. And as always, if you're feeling overwhelmed or need some expert guidance, those Microsoft partners are there to help.
Yeah, they can be your trusted advisors on this journey, ensuring you make the most of your Business Central investment.
Well, on that note, we'll wrap up this episode of the Deep Dive. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time for another deep dive into a fascinating topic.